career networks are interesting in that you don't think about them when you're in a job, but they become incredibly important as soon as you're out of a job or you're looking for a job. Obviously, that point is not the best place to be making or attempting to make your career network bigger. That work definitely helps to have been done during your job, and when you're in a role. Now, stepping back, making that career network and growing it when you're in a job can I think be done multiple ways, right? A lot of companies have specific networking groups set up, so you can get involved with those. And I think that's similar with universities where they have networking, internal networking groups where you can get involved and build your connections that way. The strength of a network is really dependent on how large it is and how closely knit it is. But when you're in a work environment and you're trying to build your network, just talking to as many people as you can, getting involved with different projects. Say you're in one line of work, but there's an adjacent line of work that's similar that you have the skills for and you're interested in, but it's not your day-to-day tasking. You can often, and I think this is true for most companies, you can ask your supervisor, hey, I'm interested in this. I'd love to talk to this team. I'd like to get involved in my free time. And that's a great way to build your connections sort of across a company, definitely laterally. And then you can one, expose yourself to new people, and two, expose yourself to new skills, which is really important. But on the human side of things, right, the more people you talk to, the friendlier you are in general. Not necessarily you don't have to kiss up to people and things like that, but just being a genuine nice person to other folks goes a long way in helping to build a network and showing that you can work hard, and I those are obviously cliches as well, but I do think they're repeated for a reason. And this model of what I'm talking about in a work setting is definitely reflected in a university setting as well, right? You can get involved with different clubs, you can get involved with different interests, and that just grows your network. That exposes you to more people, and the more people that you're exposed to, the more people are familiar with you, the more people maybe know your interests or your passions, and they know you more on a human level, not just as a face, passing by on the street, or someone they may have heard of, or know of through a friend of a friend of a friend. Having that human contact, whether it's face to face like in the past or now virtually, it goes a long way. And then those connections that you build through various activities, various clubs, sports, extracurricular, academic, they become your network going forward, right? And they stay your network. They grow with you, and they have connections that they can bring in, and potentially connect you across various different groups of folks, industries, and that then can act as a launch pad going into a work placement or a job directly out of university. And the one thing that I think university is really great for when building a network is you can get that age stratification. So you can meet people through clubs, and you can meet people through extracurriculars that are various ages. So as a fresher, you can potentially meet a fourth year who then goes into industry and becomes established in their role, and then you have these connections going up, and that builds kind of a ladder. I guess you can call it a little bit of nepotism, but I think that can sometimes be a good thing. And often what companies sometimes like to do is hire from within. So again, having that connection from university gets your recommendation, and that gets your foot in the door. So really the building your network is mirrored in similar ways in industry and at university. I would say it's definitely easier once you get into the industry, but the processes are the same. The way you should, I think, go about it is probably very similar as well. And once you then get into industry, yeah, definitely things become slightly easier in terms of mobility, both vertically and horizontally across across maybe the different realms within your organization or within your field. Developing a CV can seem daunting, it can seem tricky, but I think it can be broken down to some key components. When you're coming from university, you want to highlight any past experiences that you have had, because those are really bonuses on top of your education. So internships that you've had. In your job section, of course, have a job section if you have jobs, but highlight your education, right? That's your kind of your biggest achievement to date. Or if it's not, then fantastic, you've done some amazing things. But highlight your education and highlight any experiences that you've had. And then also, I would say, and this is something that I like to add to my resumes, is have a skills section, or have highlighted skills throughout your resume where you can really pinpoint things that are relevant to a job posting. And having sort of a skill section to highlight what you've done, or what you can do, I should say, I think is really important. When you're coming from university, I think it's important to put some of your classes that you've had. Don't put all your classes, but some that are definitely relevant to the posting of the job that you are going for. And in the same vein, if you have any previous experience, right, highlight things that you did in those experiences that are relevant to the job posting. And I think that kind of brings me around to what I've talked about a little bit before, but I think is hugely important, is take that time to tailor your resume to what the job posting is looking for. So if the job is asking for X, Y, and Z skills, and you have those skills, but they're not on your resume, put those on your resume somewhere. Put them either in a skill section or put them in the sub bullets of your experiences, and show how you have those skills and how you've utilized those skills. I think that's really important. And I think it achieves two things, right? One, it highlights that you've looked at the job posting and you've read it and you're putting in the effort to align yourself with what they're looking for. And then two, it shows that you are actually aligned with what they're looking for, and can serve as a great starting point if you get to the interview stage, which obviously has its own challenges. But if you can get to that stage, having these line one-to-ones between the job posting and the resume is I think really important. When you're building your resume, I think there's some obvious things that do's and don'ts, right? Don't make it so cluttered that nobody can read it. Don't have weird fonts. Don't have tons of pictures and things like that. I would say for most resumes in most fields, don't have any pictures. There's caveats, of course, but in the STEM world, don't have pictures, things like that. And as for color, I think that can be a bit of a personal choice on my resumes. I have a little bit of color, and I think it looks nice. I actually like to change the color based on the color of the companies that I'm applying to. I don't think that does anything. I have not looked into any research about that. I just do it because I think it's a little bit fun. But having clear, concise sections on your resume can go a long way to drawing the attention of the reviewer to the important things that you want to highlight for yourself. So I often start off with my education, and then I go to my experiences, and then I go to a skills and interest section. An interest section is really up to you. My interest section kind of just highlights things that I've, accomplishments that I've had, and things that I like to do. And then if you have awards, if you have any awards, whether that be at university or maybe an internship or a company offered you or gave you an award for building something or doing something, definitely highlight that on your resume. I think those are really important. It shows that you've done things that add value, and adding value to a company is really what they're looking for from somebody and when they're hiring you. So yeah, definitely highlight those as well. Now, when it comes to actually writing the resume and writing the job section, this one can get a bit trickier, but I think that there's a pretty good formula that I have followed, and that I've been instructed to follow by people older and smarter than I am, and that is something that's come from a blog post by a Google executive or an ex-Google executive. I think it's quite a well-known blog post at this point, but it's definitely important. I think if we could find the link and link it with this video, I think that would be very beneficial to people. But the way that you want to structure the bullet points, I should say, of your job and experience is, I did X for Y reason to accomplish Z, or some aspect or play on that formula, showing that there is a direct line between the things that you did with a specific purpose that then added some value to that company. And that demonstrates your skills in like a sentence, and that also demonstrates your ability to improve on something within a company. And again, I keep coming back to adding value. That's just a lot of what people are looking for in employees and in life. So I think that's really important. One thing that I like to do, and again, this is personal. I don't actually know if this is backed up by any science or actually changes anything. But within each experience section, so within each job, I also highlight key skills that I've learned from that job. So if I learned different types of, if I learned Python and C++, and I did Python and C++ in an internship, I'll put a little key skills section and I'll include that there, so it can tie in nicely with what I did and what that experience was. I would also say that, more general on your resume, keep it clean, keep the sections, nice and formatted and things like that. And things vary. I've heard different things between page lengths. My resume is 2 pages long. I've heard don't go past 1 page. Personally, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think if you have things that can fill out 2 pages, or flip side, if you're trying to fit it all into 1 page and it's unreadable, obviously don't do that. Be able to present your information. Probably don't go past 2 pages, especially if you're just coming out of university or early in your career. I don't think you need to stick to 1 page. That's obviously a personal choice, but that's my opinion. And yeah, I think that's the advice I have on building a resume. Into a resume, when you go into a interview, I think you can expect a couple of things, right? And I should preface that with, depending on the type of interview you're going into, depending on what field you're in, there can be different types of interviews: technical, non-technical, personal, things like that. But I guess I'll just kind of generalize, right? If you're going into an interview, you should have an idea of what the interviewer is going to ask you. In a general sense, of course, you can't know the exact questions, but in a general sense, you should have do some research, have a good idea of kind of what they're going to ask you. And that way you can prepare yourself mentally. And even if you want to write out and answer questions on your own, prepare yourself mentally for that interview. It'll go a long way, so you don't find yourself floundering. You don't find yourself stumbling over your words or stumped by maybe even a question that, after the interview, man, that was really easy. I can't believe I messed that up. So putting in a little bit of work beforehand and knowing the expectations of you going into the interview, I think, is very important. That being said, that comes from, I think what the questions that are asked of you in interviews are heavily based off of your resume. Oftentimes an interviewer will say, talk to me about this past experience that you've had, or talk to me about a class you took, or even more general questions where, how did you demonstrate leadership, right? Those questions get asked a lot. You can then point that back to something on your resume and use that as a launching point. Don't regurgitate points, but you can use it as a launching point. So that's one thing. I think, knowing that preparation and having that preparation, knowing that they're going to ask you probably things about your resume and about your skills, can go a long way in helping you succeed in an interview. Now, if the interview is more technical, like I've had to do some coding interviews, some more technical interviews, doing research into what kind of questions are asked in technical interviews is really important, right? Being able to have, for software specifically, right, have a language you want to write it in, and and then doing practice on the actual types of questions, right? Again, you can't know the exact question they're asking, but doing practice on the types of questions can go a long way, because sometimes they can be really tough. But interviews are often not looking for the right answer. There's often not a right answer for most interview questions, right? And this is going beyond just technical. Technical ones do have right answers. Going beyond that, there's often not a right answer. But if you're asked a question, they want to see how you think through it. They want to see how you can operate in maybe a tight corner or something like that. And being able to show how you think and verbalize how you think is, I think, really important, and can go a long way in an interview as well. Now moving towards, I guess, the more personal side, or the more people soft skills side of interviews, you'll often get asked questions like, do you work better in a team or as an individual? And obviously answer those things truthfully. But at the same time, tailor your answers to what the type of company is, right? If the company is looking for, or if the company is, an active startup and looking for somebody who's super agile and able to maneuver very quickly, you want to tailor your answers towards that. Don't lie about yourself, but definitely speak up your qualities in that specific realm, and really you want to emphasize those points of yourself that will really fit into that role that they're looking for. And then, I know it's difficult. I often get very panicked in these kind of situations, but trying to remain as calm as possible and answer questions straightforward and truthfully, I think is really important, because then you're able to convey who you are as a person, not just a sort of a facade you've built up. And I think in most senses, people can kind of see past, lies and things like that if you're telling them in interviews. Now, the interview process can definitely be daunting. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is like I said before, is do some practice beforehand, get yourself ready, get yourself in the mindset, try to figure out what they're going to ask. Maybe take some notes, have some notes next to you. I always do that as well. If you've got multiple screens, like a lot of people do now, maybe throw up your sort of bullet points about yourself on the screen and things like that. Yeah, that's my interview advice.